Picture this. A flight all the way from the Middle East touches down on Australian soil. The engines power down, the cabin doors open, but, for the passengers waiting inside, there's absolutely no welcome home. Instead, they're immediately met by federal agents carrying handcuffs. We're talking about 3 women with years of deeply complex history in Syria being escorted right off the tarmac. And what we're looking at here isn't just some routine airport arrest. It's actually a profound moment in international law. So let's dive right into this. The entire situation really boils down to one massive question that governments all around the world are wrestling with right now: welcome home or federal custody. Seriously, what do the highly coordinated arrests of these 3 women mean for the future of global security? Because make no mistake, how a democratic nation handles its citizens returning from the front lines of a collapsed caliphate, well, it's going to set a massive precedent. In this explainer, we're essentially cracking open the redacted files on a major, real-world counterterrorism development. We're talking about a highly specific operation regarding Syrian returnees. This goes way, way beyond a local police matter. We are looking at a literal flashpoint in a deeply polarizing global policy debate, and we're going to break down exactly how the legal framework of this whole operation actually functions.
Section 1. The incident, the return, and arrest.
To truly grasp the gravity of this event, we really have to look at the swift, calculated nature of the operation itself. Honestly, there was zero hesitation here. We're looking at a logistical timeline spanning years. First, you have the years these women spent living in the shadow of the Syrian conflict. Then we move to the months where domestic intelligence and law enforcement painstakingly calculated and finalized the legal warrants. That transitions right into the tense hours of the flight from the Middle East, culminating in those final minutes, the exact moment authorities executed those warrants right there on the tarmac in Australia. It's kind of like a masterclass in coordinated repatriation. But here's the thing. This arrival really just marks the end of one journey and the beginning of a massive legal battle. Their time in the physical war zone of Syria, that's over. Now they've got to navigate the highly complex, incredibly rigorous journey through the Australian judicial system. And honestly, this brings us to the core of why this case is so fascinating. Section 2. The evidence. Counter-terrorism charges. So we have to pivot to the legal puzzle here. Look, it's one thing to arrest someone, right? It's an entirely different challenge to prove crimes allegedly committed years ago in a foreign war zone. The prosecution's anchor here is something called foreign incursion. Basically, that's the act of traveling to or remaining in a foreign state to engage in hostile activities or support a terrorist organization. This specific concept, along with a broader charge of supporting a terror group, forms the absolute core of the legal data and analysis in these cases. It's the literal legal anchor the Australian government is throwing down. So how exactly do you prove a foreign incursion? I mean, prosecutors can't exactly just call up the local police in a Syrian war zone and ask for a witness statement. Instead, they have to rely on digital footprints, tracking IP addresses and encrypted messages. They have to comb through years of social media activity. And perhaps most crucially, they rely on highly classified ground intelligence gathered directly from Syria. Authorities literally have to weave all these tiny fragments together to build an airtight case. Section 3. The global landscape. Repatriation dilemma. Now, let's zoom out to the macro level for a second, because the reality is Australia is definitely not alone in this struggle. Governments worldwide are currently facing intense maximum pressure from human rights groups. They're demanding the immediate repatriation of women and children who are currently living in horrific conditions in Syrian desert camps. But at the exact same time, domestic security agencies are heavily warning their own governments about the severe and unpredictable risks of bringing these individuals back into society. And this pressure has resulted in some vastly different global strategies. On one side, we have the Australia strategy, proactive repatriation, immediately followed by domestic judicial action and strict monitoring. But contrast that with Europe and North America. Right now, many of those allied nations are locked in severe policy paralysis, leaning heavily toward containment, basically leaving individuals in these sprawling Syrian desert camps amid severe policy debate. It's a really stark contrast between proactive prosecution on one hand and hesitant containment on the other. Which brings us to the absolute core of the global security debate. Is it safer to bring citizens home where you actually have the infrastructure to monitor and prosecute them, or do you leave them in overseas camps where security experts are warning they might undergo further deep radicalization? As you can guess, there is no easy, universally agreed upon answer here. And honestly, That is precisely why international allies are treating these specific Australian arrests as a critical, real-world data and analysis test case. Nations from North America all the way to Europe are monitoring these proceedings incredibly closely. They want to see if the Australian legal system can successfully secure convictions without compromising national security. If Australia's strategy works, it could completely rewrite the playbook for other nations' border and legal strategies. Section 4. The Future Threat. Allied Security Policy. The events unfolding in the Australian courtroom right now are intimately connected to the evolution of U.S. and allied counterterrorism doctrine. To give you the Washington insider perspective, these arrests actually signal a shift toward a more aggressive maximum security approach to returnees. International security agencies are glued to this because it represents a massive move away from passive observation and containment straight toward active, hard-hitting judicial enforcement. To see how this impacts global policy, we can track an evolving allied doctrine in a few steps. First, nations are being forced to completely reassess how they monitor high-risk travelers globally. Second, and this is key, they are using the Australian cases to test the legal thresholds for terrorism convictions, like how much evidence is actually enough. And third, this is all part of a necessary adaptation to the lingering legacy of the IS Caliphate. As the physical war in the Middle East shifts, the legal war is really just beginning.
Understanding these stakes is absolutely vital because this directly impacts all of us. The legal thresholds being established right now will absolutely dictate how the free world handles the remnants of terror groups for the next decade. This isn't just some abstract legal theory. This is the practical, real-world application of how democracies protect their borders while still upholding the rule of law.
Which leaves us with this final, deeply provocative dilemma. Do citizens linked to foreign terror organizations fundamentally forfeit their rights? Or must they be brought back to face trial at home, regardless of how difficult that might be? It's a complex, incredibly challenging question that gets right to the heart of what a justice system is actually built to handle. Take a moment to really think about your stance on this, and feel free to share your analysis. If you found this structured explainer helpful, make sure to follow along for more of these deep dives. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the data shaping our world.